Hi everyone, and welcome to our session on simplifying backup and recovery for Microsoft 365 with Cohesity. My name is Adam Gabriel. I'm a senior systems engineer based in Sydney, covering ANZ. I've been with Cohesity for about 2 years now. Prior to my time here, I've worked with a number of other leading vendors like Nutanix, HPE and Nimble Storage. And prior to all of that, I've worked within both customer and partner environments. So over the last 20 years or so, I've worn a number of different hats. I've had a big focus on virtualization, storage, data protection, and cloud. And I'm actually an MCSE in Exchange and Microsoft 365. So I've worked with many customers throughout their journey to the cloud. So today we're going to be covering a bit of information around why we would protect Microsoft 365. Including the current state of the data protection options or capabilities within M365. We'll run through an introduction to Cohesity and how we protect Microsoft 365 data. Then we'll finish up with a demo, so hopefully everyone walks away with an understanding of why it's important to protect data, not just in M365, but also on-prem and in the cloud. And of course, how we at Cohesity can help. So why protect Microsoft 365? There are certainly many reasons to do so, and some of these will be more relevant to one organization versus another. So let's walk through a few of these key areas. First being business expectations. So let's consider what Microsoft provide with Microsoft 365. They provide a platform that provides the level of application resiliency that is demanded by businesses these days. But what about data protection? When operating on-premise, backup was a critical part of an Exchange environment or a SharePoint environment. And if backups were not functioning, the business would want to know why. They would want to know when it's going to be fixed, and they'd be concerned that backups were not working. So what if we have a failure that corrupts data and that failure is replicated within storage or within Exchange itself? What if a user deletes mail? These risks are still real when data is moved to Microsoft 365. And the business expects that IT will be able to recover their data and do it in a very timely manner, just the way that they have expected in the past when everything was being run on-premise. But hang on, isn't the cloud reliable? My cloud provider guarantees service availability. So why don't we? So we don't need to worry about data once it's in the cloud, right? Well, no. The answer is SaaS data protection is really a shared responsibility. As we just mentioned, SaaS providers like Microsoft protect against infrastructure failures, application failures, or disasters within their own infrastructure. But their objective is primarily service availability. Any data loss due to application usage or misuse, or from a security breach, or the even more likely scenario of an end user failure, customers are still responsible for the data in that situation. For years, most of us have subscribed to the 3-2-1 rule for data protection on premise. So 3 copies of data on 2 different storage mediums with 1 copy off-site. The point is, we all agreed that backup was a critical component in the past, and we went to a lot of trouble to ensure we could deal with these failures. So what's changed since then? One of the things that has changed is the risk of a disaster from something other than a natural disaster, an administrative issue, or some sort of power outage. We're now seeing a significant increase in attacks such as ransomware and phishing schemes, and this is ultimately costing businesses money. These attacks are getting more sophisticated, more targeted, with threats like ransom cloud that are actively looking to infect and encrypt platforms like hosted mail and in particular Exchange Online. And it's actually been predicted that we'll see a new business fall victim to a ransomware attack every 11 seconds throughout 2021. So even more than ever, an appropriate data protection strategy is important. And that is just as much a reality for data stored in the cloud as it is on-prem. Compliance is another key factor for organizations to consider when it comes to protecting their data. Of course, there are a number of different compliance standards or regulatory requirements that might be applicable to any particular organization. But as a couple of examples, the ASD, or the Australian Signals Directorate, provides the ASD Essential 8 as a set of strategies to mitigate against cybersecurity incidents. And that includes a focus on daily backups. Likewise, APRA have several standards and guidelines such as CPS and CPG 234, which also include a focus on data protection and the importance of storing data off-site. The key message that is consistent across all these recommendations and requirements is that we should have backups. They should be stored on a separate medium, and we should have a copy stored in another location or off-site. We'll have a quick look at the protections in place for Microsoft 365, but ultimately none of these really stack up to this level of compliance. Starting with Exchange Online, we can see that we have somewhat limited flexibility. Recoverable items or deleted item retention is, of course, useful for quick self-service recoveries for users or administrators, but there is a 30-day limit to the retention of data here. Archive mailboxes only exist in order to reduce the size of a user's primary mailbox. There's not another copy of the data, and data can still be deleted from the archive mailbox. In-place hold or litigation hold is definitely helpful to retain data, even if it is deleted by the user. However, an additional copy is not created, and it's certainly not stored off-site. We're really at the liberty of the platform resiliency to ensure that data is protected. My biggest frustration with things like litigation hold was always that it was not very efficient to use, with search processes generally being very slow and somewhat complex. It's then a similar story with SharePoint Online and OneDrive, although with some longer retention times. OneDrive can recover to a version of a file up to 30 days old, but once the file is deleted, all the previous versions go with it. So overall, there's really a lack of granular recovery, and long-term retention can really only be achieved by maintaining additional licenses. So it can be difficult and costly to guarantee recoverability. Even if all these options came with unlimited retention, the data would still be retained within the same platform and wouldn't comply with some of those requirements from our regulatory bodies. Okay, so now that we've painted the picture of doom and gloom for data in Microsoft 365 and the cloud in general, we can now take you through a quick introduction to Cohesity. To start us off, it's worth understanding the problem that Cohesity wants to solve, and it really is more than just improving data protection. At Cohesity, we're aiming to solve the problem of mass data fragmentation. If we take a look at a typical organization, we can see that data is growing exponentially, and that data is spread across a number of environments like remote offices, edge locations, data centers, and public clouds. Each of these environments are comprised of silos of infrastructure, storing various applications and their data. Of course, that data is critical to the organization, so it's backed up, it's replicated from edge to data center to data center, and from data center to cloud. So what we end up doing is creating fragmented copies of data now spread across multiple sites and infrastructure silos. And each of these sites will have its own discrete set of infrastructure that needs to be managed and maintained independently. And then when it comes to data protection, it's likely that there are different solutions deployed across these locations in order to protect all the different workloads, particularly when it comes to public cloud versus on-prem. The other challenge is that data is now dark and trapped within these silos, meaning that it's not easily discoverable or usable. For example, once you back up data, it's now locked in that specific backup format, maybe on tape or in the cloud. And you can't easily search or reuse that data for other purposes without first restoring a complete copy of that data. So Cohesity's vision is to solve this challenge of mass data fragmentation. We want to consolidate and eliminate redundant copies of data whilst driving more value and efficiency by making all this data searchable and more usable. So we solve this challenge with our Cohesity Helios platform. Under the covers, the platform is essentially a distributed web scale file system that sits on a number of nodes as a cluster. This cluster can be physical, but it can also be virtual, or it can run as software in the cloud. The platform has a number of capabilities included, like global deduplication, compression, encryption, and the ability to replicate data. The primary use case for Helios is data protection. We incorporate our data protection software right into the platform. So now we have a single scalable solution that actually includes all the data protection components, the backup software, the servers to run the software, as well as the target storage for the backups. If we need to scale the platform, we can do so by simply adding more nodes to the cluster. Another use case for Cohesity Helios is the ability to provision NAS shares directly from the cluster. We're a scale-out storage platform under the covers, and so we can take that storage and provision an NFS mount, an SMB share, or an S3 target. And if you consider these two initial use cases, this is really how we're ingesting data onto our platform, by backing it up through data protection or by hosting it through a NAS share. Once we have the data on the platform, the other side of what we do is all about unlocking that data. For example, using backup data to quickly provision a clone copy of a VM, a database, or a NAS share for test and dev, UAT, reporting, or analytics type use cases. As all this data is ingested, we're also indexing that data, making the data immediately searchable for those recovery and cloning operations. So what we've really done here is consolidate traditional copies of data along with multiple silos of infrastructure like data protection, target storage, media servers, file services, and cloud gateways into a single scalable platform. Of course, we also include native integration with the public cloud, including the three primary players, AWS, Azure, and GCP. We have a number of different integrations and capabilities like archiving to the cloud, cloning to the cloud, failing over to the cloud, and of course, protecting cloud workloads and SaaS solutions. All this is managed by a single UI for all data and workloads across all locations, including the ability to integrate with automation tools or orchestrate everything through APIs. The management experience is simple and consistent, regardless of the size of your deployment, or whether you're just protecting M365 or you're protecting workloads both on-prem and in the cloud. On top of this, we can expand the capability of the platform by installing additional apps through the Cohesity marketplace, where users can go and download additional applications to run on the platform, further increasing the use cases of Helios. Some examples here are antivirus apps, vulnerability scanning, and e-discovery apps. We have a copy of all the data on the platform, so why not install and run the apps on the same platform? This way, we're moving the applications closer to the data. Cohesity's integrated data protect software is what powers our super simple and consolidated backup and recovery platform. Being a hyper-converged solution, we can drive fast ingest of data with all backups being distributed across all nodes within the cluster. But this also translates into recovery and enables our instant mass restore capabilities. Backups stored on Cohesity are actually immune to ransomware attacks. This is because of the way we store our data and never expose our backups outside of the Cohesity platform itself. Then in addition to that, we also provide ransomware detection and prevention out of the box, which we can leverage to notify you when we see any anomalies in the data that's being ingested into the platform to ensure you can react quickly in the event that data outside of backups has actually been exposed to a potential attack. And of course, we provide a mechanism to recover quickly in the event that there is an attack. When it comes to licensing Cohesity, we have an extremely simple per terabyte licensing model. We do not license per workload or per M365 user or mailbox. We only care about the consumed terabytes after deduplication and compression. This means you can consume our software as a subscription, as a service, or as a service through any of our partners. It also means that regardless of the workloads that you want to protect, we just have a single license to cover all of those requirements. So when we translate this all into how we actually protect Microsoft 365, We support native protection of Microsoft 365. Our solution can be deployed on-prem, in the cloud, or as a service, so you can protect and store your data in the location most suitable to your business requirements. Out of the box, we can protect Exchange, SharePoint Online, OneDrive, and Teams. We protect M365 through Microsoft's Graph API, and through that, we can securely back up the data from M365 and store it within the Cohesity Helios platform. Once we've taken a backup, the backups can be archived off to external cloud storage or replicated to another instance of Cohesity. So if you want to keep a copy of your backups on-prem or in another cloud provider, we can provide that flexibility. Our global deduplication and compression ensures maximum storage efficiency to help minimize the investment. So this means we can efficiently back up data for thousands of users. When it comes to recovery, all that data is indexed as it's written into Cohesity Helios, so we can leverage our global search to find individual items or mailboxes or OneDrive items, regardless of if the data is stored on-prem, in Azure, in AWS, or in GCP. So let's jump into a quick demo to show how Cohesity protects M365. So what you'll see here is the Cohesity dashboard. This dashboard provides a nice simple overview for the health and the status of the Cohesity Helios platform, giving us an indication of storage consumption, compliance, are we meeting SLAs, is everything protected, as well as data reduction and performance statistics. It's worth noting that the management experience for Cohesity is exactly the same, whether you're deployed across many sites, a single site, whether you're protecting many different workloads, whether you're deployed in cloud, on-prem, whether you have a small or a large implementation. So we're just going to dive into data protection to understand how we actually protect Microsoft 365. There's really three key components when it comes to protecting any workload with Cohesity. The first of those is a source. We need to register a source with the platform. So to do that, we click on sources, go to register, and choose the workload that we want to register. In this instance, we can choose Microsoft 365, and then we can go ahead and populate the required credentials to connect to the 365 subscription, as well as the Azure app credentials that you need to generate before you go ahead and register that source. You can see here, I've already registered my M365 source. So that's done. We can now move on to the next requirement, which is a policy. We include a number of policies out of the box. The policies are really what define how frequently we are going to protect something and where we're going to place copies of those backups that we take. If I dive into my bronze with archive policy and really quickly have a look at how that's configured, you can see here we've got a backup that's happening every day and we're retaining it for 3 days. If I wanted to, I could build out some additional extended retention to build out a grandfather, father, son hierarchy of those backups and ensure that my local retention is adequate for my organization. Next, we can add replication. Again, we can add multiple replication schedules, or we can just have a single replication schedule with a retention regime that differs from that of the actual backup. So in this instance, I'm replicating to another remote cluster, doing that after every run, and I'm keeping that for a week, as opposed to the 3 days that I'm keeping it on the local cluster. The other thing we can do here is add an archive task to actually archive data off to the public cloud, which could be, in this instance, S3 Glacier, could be an S3 bucket, could be Azure Hot Blob or Cold Blob or Archive Blob for that matter, Glacier Deep Archive, any S3 compatible storage or an NFS target as well. So we can add multiple archive targets. Again, I could archive off to multiple clouds if I had the need to. So I could send one copy of my backups to Azure for long-term retention, maybe to Archive Blob. And then maybe I wanted to keep some more recent backups on S3 in an S3 bucket for more speedy recovery and just to meet the price point that I might see best for my organization. So that's the policy. Again, defines how frequently we're going to back up and where we're going to keep copies of those backups. The final piece of the puzzle is the protection job. All right. So to protect a workload, you can see here I've already got a few protection jobs created. So if I want to protect Microsoft 365, maybe I want to protect a given mailbox, I can just go in here, hit protect, choose Microsoft 365, select my 365 subscription that I want to protect. You can see here that I'm protecting a few mailboxes already. Maybe I want to go ahead and select another one, or maybe I want to enable auto protect and protect all mailboxes in my organization and any new ones that are created in the future. For this demo, let's just select the individual mailbox. I'll hit save on that one. Give the job a name, and I'll assign a policy. Okay, in this case, I'll just use our bronze policy. That's just going to take a local backup for this one. I hit protect. We've now created that job. We're now protecting that mailbox that we weren't actually protecting before. Okay, so I'm just going to jump into my mailbox here in Microsoft 365. You can see here I've got this email reminding me to finish watching Cobra Kai. Probably not something I'll ever get to, but I'm just going to delete that message and then I can jump into my deleted items and just empty my deleted items folder as well. So we can see that that message is certainly gone from my mailbox. If I jump back into Cohesity here now, I can just go into my recoveries and I can go ahead and choose Microsoft 365 and I can choose whichever Microsoft 365 item that I want to recover, browse through the required option. And in this instance, we're going to recover an individual mail item. So you can see here, I've got this search capability to apply additional filters and look at a particular time window that I want to search for, maybe a subject or a folder name or the to and from, etc. So you can see in here, I can just search for part of that subject and immediately I'll get a result, including a copy of that email that I've since deleted. So now I've found the email I want to recover, I can hit continue. The next screen gives me the option to continue the recovery, which will initiate the push of that message from Cohesity back into the user's mailbox. If I wanted to, I could export to PST, or I can select an alternate recovery point. So you can see here, I've got two available recovery points at a similar time, but nevertheless, one's local. A couple of recovery points are local, but then I have also a copy of this particular email sitting in my S3 bucket where I've chosen to archive a copy of this mailbox off to. So if I wanted to, I could select that S3 bucket to pull that mail item back from and push it back into the user mailbox. So all I'm going to do here is click recover. And that's going to kick off the process to commence pushing that email back into the user mailbox. It'll just take a moment to run through. It should be pretty quick. So you can see now it's now finished. So I can jump into my mailbox and we can see that that email is already back there, reminding me to continue watching a series that I'll probably never finish watching. So that's as easy as it is to perform a recovery of a mail item. The same is true when we want to go through and recover an individual SharePoint item, something from a team site, or something from a user's OneDrive. So why protect Microsoft 365? For a start, we need to acknowledge that our data really is our responsibility. We need that data to be retained appropriately to ensure we meet our compliance requirements and to be able to respond quickly in the event of data loss. And it all needs to be stored securely to ensure it's available when it's time to recover. And we need to make sure we have the right platform there to enable us to perform that recovery quickly. So thank you very much for your time today. I hope that has been helpful.